Yeah.
With amazing support and my team, we got us on the way, because you'll notice that we've got Diane, we've got Eric, and we've got a special guest that we're going to introduce here in just a little bit. But we're missing our resident technician, Dieter. He's up in the Toronto area where he lives. And he has been writing me over the last hour saying that they are experiencing severe weather up there, including tornado warnings, which is, I don't know, that tornadoes didn't used to bug anybody around the world except for the US, but now they're becoming equal opportunity threats, I guess, attributed to climate change with all the rest of the things here. So anyway, so welcome. This is Clear for Takeoff. No, it's not. It's Fearless Flight Live. That's what it is tonight. And we're back to talk to anybody out there who has a fear of flying, or you maybe know somebody, or you just like to talk about airplanes. And so we're glad to have you with us. And I've got a new feature here that we can we'll test out here and make that work. I'm going to put our slides up there briefly.
Maybe.
Like magic. There we go.
There you go.
Who'd have thunk it? Okay. All right. And so here we are again. We always say a brief word about joining our Fearless Flight Facebook group called Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. And this is a place to come and share your stories and your tales of woe, and find other like-minded people who are in this struggle to overcome their fear of flying as well. We passed 800 some weeks ago, and we're rapidly approaching 900 here. We've got what I call a critical mass, so we got a lot of people up there. So you should be able to find some good support tonight. I remind you, we do have our call-in feature available. If you have a question at any time, we just love it when you call 602-737-3804, and we're going to let Diane say a few words, and then I'm going to bring Eric up there. Not that I would do it on purpose, but sometimes when we have a guest, we tend to go long and they get stuck in the green room, so to speak. So we're going to talk to them, and I like to think we're saving the best for last. And so we'll end up with the interview, and then a few things that we've got going on here, including a new class that we're going to do. So Diane, what do I need to know to have less stress?
Less stress. Well, when it comes to flying, preparation is like being a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout. Be prepared. And whether you love to fly, you're a little anxious about flying, no matter what your status is at that point, it's always a good idea to be early. And we've talked about that with regard to getting through the initial checking bags, getting through security, getting to your gate, giving yourself time to relax. And that's always very good when it comes to the first leg of your trip. And that's blanket statement, always a good idea. I try to do it even when I'm going to work. I like to get to the airport a little bit earlier than I need to, only so that I can kind of relax and review some of the notes I need to know about the upcoming trip. Being prepared and planning ahead is even more important if you are booking a trip that involves a connection, particularly if there's two connections and you have to change planes. But let's just start with just one. Back in the day, a travel agent would make your plans. He or she would be able to make those reservations and give you lots of leeway, and because they knew how things worked. Nowadays, people are booking their own tickets for the most part. But airports are bigger. It's a longer distance very often between gates. There's lots more flights, so there's more congestion at certain airports. And so while we always attempt and try, and our goal is for on-time departure and an on-time arrival, it doesn't always happen that way. Weather intervenes and air traffic intervenes and maintenance issues come up and all those kinds of things. But even if we leave early and we land early, just because you land 15 or 20 or even 30 minutes early doesn't mean you're going to deplane early. The gate may be occupied, that previous aircraft might not have pushed back. So it might take you a while, literally from the time you land to have the main cabin door open for you to get out. It's always a good idea to double check your gates. We try to do that when we land. We notify our passengers if they have close connections, those that are staying there to wait on the aircraft. But we as flight attendants, we can't help you when it comes to calling ahead to the next airplane and have them hold planes. We can't do that anymore. So we can't help you in that regard. The best help is for you yourself to plan ahead. Give yourselves plenty of time. If it means you're in the airport a little bit longer, bring a book, a newspaper, get a movie on your iPad, something like that. So go ahead and always have something to do in the interim. And that way you're still relaxed. You may have a few extra moments or maybe an extra hour or two in the airport, but you're not going to be completely out of luck having missed a flight and then not getting where you want to go, because that's the ultimate stressor. So that's just a real easy way to kind of reduce your stress on travel day.
When something that I was reminded of is when I'm booking like flights for the 301 class, where we're going out somewhere and coming back, there's no protection for me having a minimum time between flights. So in other words, I can book a flight that's going to arrive in, let's say we're going from out and back from Phoenix to Las Vegas and back. I can book a flight that'll land in Las Vegas at noon, and I can book a return flight if there's one available at 12:15. So that wouldn't be prudent. But if you are booking a flight that's direct, not as opposed to nonstop. Nonstop means you're going to have one leg. Direct means you may have another city or two, even sometimes that you connect through. Those are usually protected. If you say I'm going from Phoenix to Tennessee to Knoxville, it may take you through Midway or Dallas or something like that. And they usually build in. I'm going to say usually. I would say they always do. They're going to build in a minimum turn time because they know that you might be delayed or something like that. But it makes a difference if you're on the same airplane, you land and you stay on the airplane and go on, versus if you have to change airplanes and stuff like that. So that's done behind the scenes, and you can't control it. Go ahead.
No, that's, as you said, that's the difference. People think a direct flight is a nonstop flight, and that's not true. As you described it, nonstop means you get on the plane, you get off at your destination. Direct, it's like it may be a milk run. You may stay on the plane and make 2 or 3 stops, but you're on the same aircraft because it has the same flight number. So that's safe. But back in the old days, they would not book a flight for you. They called it a legal or illegal connection time.
Right.
Now, because you're doing it online on the computer, they have you. The only person that has any control over that is you, the passenger who's booking the ticket. And so, as Ron said, just because you're scheduled to land one place and have theoretically a half an hour before your next flight departs, that's really, I wouldn't even do that. And I can run through the terminal. So yeah.
Okay, Eric, I'm thinking that I'm flying along and we just take off. And for some reason, there's this big rumble that I usually don't hear towards the end of my flight. What the heck's going on?
Well, this happened to one of my wife's best friends who was leaving last week after visiting to go back to my favorite fictional airport from Phoenix to East Overshoe, Wisconsin. And there they were on the climb out, and the captain made a PA that he was going to lower the landing gear and it would be a little loud. And he did lower the landing gear and it was a little loud. And I thought I should tell the viewers about that, because if they were right on the edge and heard that, that would probably be exceedingly alarming. And what's happening there is all the performance planning we talk about, we don't usually talk about planning our ability to stop. And the most important thing for the brakes on the airplane is that they can absorb the energy required if we needed to reject the takeoff. And by absorbing the energy, I mean accepting the heat that comes from rejecting the takeoff. And the brakes get hot from long taxis. The particular airplane that my friend was on had just come in from a quick turn, as Diane was talking about, hustled to the gate, and then they left in Phoenix from, I think, gate B17 or something like that, and taxied all the way out to runway 7 left. So a very long taxi. Taxiing builds up heat energy in the brakes. And some brakes are steel, some are carbon. And now most of the airplanes measure or monitor the brake temperature so the pilots can see it. When Ron and I started, we would all do this by charting. How long ago did you land? What speed did you apply the brakes? How heavy was the airplane? What was the outside air temperature? To estimate.
And charting means that we had to manually go into a chart and do the math. Okay.
We'd look it up in a big phone book thing to determine that the brakes could accept the energy. But now it's mostly displayed on the screens to the pilots, tells you what the temperature is, knowing that they can go or not. And some of the airplanes even have brake fans installed that can help cool when the airplane's on the ground. But nevertheless, occasionally the brakes will be cool enough to go. They'll take off, but once they're in the wheel well, the fans can't be run, and the energy they absorb will continue to build up a little bit. So the solution is to extend the landing gear in flight. There are speed limitations for that and altitude limitations, but you can still, most airplanes do that well above 200 miles per hour, up to 20,000 feet or so, run with the landing gear down, which at that, as Kim would tell you, in Canada, that's quite 200 miles an hour is a pretty big wind chill factor. And whether the brakes are steel or carbon, you can cool them off pretty fast. But the noise is loud because the gear is down at considerably higher speeds than it normally is for approach or takeoff. And I just wanted to mention that to you if you're ever on the airplane and that happens. That's not an emergency or any sort of thing like that. It's just an additional method to cool off the airplane's brakes so that they're within normal temperature range.
Okay, cool. And so we don't have to guess anymore because we have a gauge now. So that makes it a lot safer operation. And the other thing is the brakes, when they heat up like that on the ground, they actually reach peak temperature about 15 minutes later than when you applied all that. So that's why sometimes you get airborne and then you notice that the temperature's climbing and all that. So anyway, okay.
Right. Exactly right.
So let's let me see if I can do this once again and do it in relatively efficient. So our guest tonight is Kim Thirsk. Let me catch up here. And she comes to us. We first met in I was going to say something clever, and now my mind went blank. That'll teach me a lesson. We first met as she called up for a 50-minute coaching session. So we always want to mention that. I got plenty of room on my schedule for more coaching sessions. So Kim, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to put this back into hold so that we can see your smiling face. And let me change the view here a little bit. I think I can do that. So we'll go to gallery. Perfect. Okay. So how are you? And welcome to Fearless Flight Live.
And thank you for having me. It was great.
And you always, even before we had the Zoom, I could hear this smile on your face because it's so bright and shiny there. But so people look at you. The first thing, as we were talking before, is they look at you and they say, she really wasn't afraid. She just wanted the attention, which is my line, right? But is that true or not true? What was it like for you?
So I was very afraid. I developed a fear of flying about, 3 or 4 years ago. We did a family trip to Hawaii and so we flew from Vancouver because I'm in Canada. So we flew Vancouver to Honolulu. And about that halfway point, I was like, oh, let's look at the map, which was a bad idea because that's when I realized I was in kind of like that, what I call the no-go zone, whatever it's called zone, where it's like you're the equal distance from Honolulu to Vancouver. And then I was like, what if there's an emergency? And then all the panic and anxiety and everything started to kick in. And then ever since then, every time we get up in the air, I would just get super nervous. And I've flown a lot since that trip, but just every time the anxiety would build, and then it would build earlier and earlier as my flights went. So I would be crying at the gates. We went to Mexico a couple of years ago and I was in tears at Pearson International in Toronto because I was so nervous about getting on that plane, even though it was only a 3.5 hour flight. But yeah, so I was a wreck the whole time, before, during, and after the flight. Once we landed, I was like, yay, we're here. But yeah, I've come a long ways since.
So what were the triggers? What were your triggers that bothered you?
So kind of in talking with you, I discovered one is like the waiting time, because we'd get to the gate and get through security and everything, check our bags, and we get in there and then you sit and wait. And because I wasn't occupying myself with anything, I would sit there and then I'd be like, oh, how does the plane, I know how a plane flies, but how does that happen? Like, it just doesn't seem like it should happen. And all those irrational thoughts, those what ifs that just kept building and building and building. And because I wasn't doing anything while I was sitting at the gate waiting, it just kept building and building. And I get those like rumbly feelings in my stomach. I feel like I'd have to go to the washroom 1,000 times before I got on. And then when I didn't have a way to control it or to like redirect at that time, then that would result in just like a panic attack and I'd cry. And then,
So
it wasn't very good.
So did you ever have the notion that there's probably nothing I can do for this, or what got you to, how'd you find us? And was there a barrier before you got that? Like just thinking you were going to have to just live with that the rest of your life?
Well, for a while I was like, I'm going to have to live with this. I don't know what else to do. I don't know why it keeps increasing once brought it on all of a sudden. And so, I always had like Ativan or Xanax and Gravol with me, thinking,
okay,
as soon as I get on the plane, I'll pop one, I'll have a little sleep and we'll be 3/4 of the way there. But that's not like a long-term thing. And I used to really enjoy flying and I wanted to be able to do that again. And my husband and I love to travel. So I don't want to have this feeling and be going through this every single time we fly. So I was like, I need to do something about it. And then I happened just to come across the Birds of a Feather group on Facebook and joined in and like was a watcher for probably a year, and then contacted you for our free 15-minute session. And here we are.
Were you just fine before that one trip to Hawaii? Was everything fine? And then after that, it just started off like a waterfall after that one trip?
Yeah, like I had like a little bit of turbulence. I had a really bad flight actually coming from Phoenix to Edmonton. Had a bad flight, just with some turbulence there. But I was like, oh, that was a little more than I was used to. But that would have been like 10 years ago. And then, that's that mark when we were on our way to Hawaii. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then kind of ever since then, I was like, what happens? Like, if there's an emergency and like we're, I don't know, flying to Europe or something, whatever. And then so Ron and I got in the talk about ETOPS. Is that what it's called? It used to be called, where
yes,
there's
ETOPS.
always two like alternate landing, and if engines fail, we can cruise for a while before and we can get to those landing sites. So a lot of it was like knowledge. Like I understand how a plane flies, even though it seems crazy, but it can work. But to have
that's the first step is to educate yourself, because when you know more, you do better. That's why Diane was talking about things that happen behind the scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you did, was you learned more about it.
And like in our session, I had a ton of questions just to educate myself about flights and like landing and cruising without engines and all those things that worried me and that I built up in my head in any of those what if scenarios. We talked about all of them and you were like, this is this, and things that I never knew. And I wouldn't even know that ETOPS was a thing. How would I know that except from talking to you? So the education was a huge part for me. And then because I'm kind of a dork sometimes, I made little cue cards of like everything, like this is how the plane flies, with like thrust and all and like made little diagrams, and just so that I always had something I could go back to and read if I was starting to get those feelings again. And
And so by the time we got done with the coaching and you did a little note codes and stuff, your anxiety just miraculously disappeared, right? It was just like I passed a magic wand over you, and you
I
never.
wish it was like,
right. No, it doesn't work that way, does it? No. And you did the work. So talk a little bit more about that. How did you actually stay focused on getting on the airplane and talk yourself into, okay, I can do this?
Okay, so we had talked through quite a few strategies for me to use to distract myself from getting down that derailing path of thoughts. So I used things like writing with your non-dominant hand was huge for me. I always had music, but the music would just kind of it just kind of blurs into the background. So I got the harmonizer, and so I started listening to that the day that I got it. So I had about a week to work through that. And the first time I heard it, I was like, this is crazy, but it makes you stop and just think in your tracks. So I used that. There were some like math problems that we had worked through and kind of tested out. And so I ended up getting a Sudoku book, because that's like math, sort of figuring out numbers, but then use my non-dominant hands with that. And then I made sure I had like all the resources from the Fearless Flying Kit on my phone with me downloaded, so I knew that I had them. talk through a couple things with my husband of some strategies that we could do together, things to like just talk through it, tell me how you're feeling, write exactly like question and answer how you're feeling with your non-dominant hand. Yeah, and they worked. I mean, when we flew out, we had a 3-hour drive to the airport really early in the morning. So right before, we were probably 20 minutes from the Calgary airport. And I started getting like those feelings in my stomach. And I was like, oh no, I thought I was going to be, I was like, this is going to be magical. And I was like, this is not magical. I don't feel very good. And so Kevin just talked me through it. Like, how are you feeling? Why do you feel like this? So, verbalized that and talked with him a little bit. And he's like, it's going to be okay. You've done this before. We will be fine. Planes are meant to fly. And then when we got to the airport, I put my headphones on, listened to the harmonizer. I went for a walk around. And then as soon as the gate agents got there, I went up there and I was like, just so you know, I'm a nervous flyer and I'm going to pre-board when you guys call it. And they're like, absolutely. And so when they called pre-boarding, I was like, bye, honey, see you later. Put my backpack on and away I went, because he wants to be the very last one on the plane and I want to be the very first one so I can get settled in. And so I got on and I told the crew, I'm like, I'm a super nervous flyer, and we fly on WestJet everywhere up here. So and they've always been fantastic. And so they were like, well, do you want to meet the pilots? Just give me 2 minutes. They're on their checklist. You get settled in their seat and I'll come and grab you. And so I went in and chatted with the pilots and, asked them like, is there anything unexpected? Or is there is there a storm that you guys know of that we're going to go through? Like, flying time, altitude, all those kind of things that I want to know to put my mind at ease. And yeah, then I got back in my seat and I put the harmonizer on and listened there. And then all of a sudden my husband joined me and away we went. So
very cool. So,
yeah.
So the two things, basically 3 things: educate yourself, which you did.
Yeah.
Find some way to distract or disrupt your thinking,
Yeah.
and then connect with people. Those are the 3 things.
Yeah.
And the things you talked about, we played the numbers game, just silly little simple addition problems, but making it complex as you go on and stuff like that. And all that's designed to get you out of the fast, intuitive, automatic thinking that's already been corrupted by your biases about flying. And it's to slow you down. So breathing is one way. Just simply taking a deep breath and slowing yourself down. But another way to more actively do that is to have your partner, like you did with your husband, engage with you and say, talk to me, Kim, tell me what's going on. And I don't, did he join us in coaching at all? I can't remember whether
he wasn't able to join us that night, but we went through some things that I could chat with him about.
Exactly. And so when I do coaching with people, I will invite them to, if they're comfortable, to have their spouse join us for 5, 10, or 15 minutes to help bring them in and because the typical person who's flying with somebody they love, who's afraid to fly, they feel bad because they can't help them and they got to watch them. And so they typically do a couple of things. They withdraw and say, I don't know this person, and fall asleep right away, or they get overly productive. Like I say, the typical male profile is, I'm going to solve this problem for this person I love, and it doesn't work. They can't do anything for you. What they can do mostly is to get you to look into their eyes, to slow you down, to have them mirror your breathing, and then just to ask, talk to me, tell me what's going on. Not necessarily, I'm not totally opposed to them saying it's going to be all right, but the person already knows on some level. Kim already knew she was going to be all right. That's not the problem with flying. It's those triggers that activate her smoke alarm, if you will, and get you going there. So go ahead, Diane.
I was just going to say, Kim is the passenger we want to have. We love
totally.
Because what you said is you got on first, you introduced yourself to the flight attendant, you got to meet the pilots. The way we can help nervous flyers the most is if we know that there's a nervous flyer, and we don't necessarily know unless you come tell us. And so everything you did, we're like, yes, this is wonderful, because then we know during the course of the flight, if I know I have a fearful flyer on board, I'll stop every single time I go down the aisle and say, I'll squat down, hey, how you doing? What's up? Where are you going? You meeting family? Just to engage and talk with you and say, do you have any questions about what's going on? And then a lot of, whatever we can do to help and answer those questions, we'll be glad to. So what you did was just perfect. Just perfect.
Did you find the flight attendant checked in on you after that at all,
Yeah.
Kim? Yeah.
They did on both legs actually, and it was funny. So on the way back, because I did the same thing, and I'm sure everybody thinks just that is a nervous flyer, and they're like, it's me. Like, I don't want to. What if people see me crying or losing my mind? I'm at the point now where I'm like, whatever. Like, it's not just me. And so, like, usually by the time I get onto the plane and I'm talking with the flight attendant, I'm usually crying because I'm an emotional person. So when I talk about it, I start to cry, and then I'm like, woo. But I don't care if people see me doing that anymore. But then at least, like, you're right, then the flight attendants know, they come and check on me. So on the way back, one of the flight attendants came up and he said, oh, how are you doing? Like, we're cruising now. This is the easy part. And I looked at him and I said, cruising is the worst part for me. I'm like, I love takeoff and landing, love them, but cruising, like, no, that's not my jam. Give me like a quick flight, half an hour and then down again. But yeah, the long cruises are not my thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Eric and I have flown together a lot, and he used to cry a little bit before we take off all the time. So
we're the one, the flight attendants are crying too. So
exactly. So it's totally acceptable. Yeah.
I just knew how bad it was going to be for 3 days.
Exactly.
So, we're in the galley behind a curtain and we're crying. That's the only difference.
Yeah. So do you have any plans to fly in the future? Directly?
We were hoping to go on a tropical holiday in November. We'll see how things go in the next little bit. And in the past, when you were more apprehensive about flying, when you would get to your destination and have the flight to go home, would you think about the flight home as well? Would you ruminate about that sometimes? And if so, I would.
Did you notice a difference in that this time when you're on the ground? Did you feel bothered by the thought of the flight home?
Not at all, because once we were up and then we landed again, I was like, that was so easy. Like, what am I worried about? You know, this is what planes do. This is what people do every day, that it's fine to fly. But so I didn't think about it at all. And then coming home, we had a 2.5 hour mechanical delay. So it was even worse, because then it was more time to wait in the airport. The Hamilton airport is really, really small at the gate. But there wasn't very many people there. So we laid out on some benches and we watched TV, and I had a little nap, and I went and talked with the gate agent to find out what the problem was, and just to keep informed. So I knew for my own peace of mind that it was a leaky tap that was dripping down into cargo, and that's all that it was. So just to keep informed. And then I actually boarded at the end with my husband on the way back, because I was like, I am feeling really good. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, I am sure. And even though we were the very last two to get on, I stopped quick and I was like, just, I'm a nervous flyer. They were like, okay, no problem. And so I still got to pop in quick and say hi to the pilots, and then down to my seat, and they came and checked on me, and I was fine the flight home. So really good. whether you fly in November or whether you fly a year from November,
you don't have to do all the things that you did, and you were a very, very good student. I mean, you really took action, and which is the best way to handle this. But whether it's quickly or it's later, you don't have to keep doing that every wakeful moment that you have. But when you get within 2 to 4 weeks of the flight, you can kind of go back through your notes and redo that. So you're not. So you put me out of a job, basically, is the goal. And that's the way it should be. So anyway, congratulations, Kim. And thanks for coming on and bearing your soul. I really appreciate it. So,
thank you for everything.
You're totally welcome.
Non-therapy piece of advice to you, Kim, is do not let the flight attendant see a Sudoku puzzle book sticking out of your purse or knapsack. Right. Otherwise, after you fall asleep, it will be inexplicably missing.
Yeah. A little kleptomania. Yeah. So you can stay with us if you want, and we're gonna move on to the remainder of this here. Oh, it always defaults back. Well, that's something I learned tonight. I have to go rapidly through that. Okay, so here comes the big finish, folks. You people. That's what a nice way to address all of you. Many of you have been asking for some time, particularly when the COVID fascination started to lessen a little bit. Are we ever going to have an advanced class again, which we call the Clifford Takeoff 301 class? Both Diane and Eric have participated in those classes with me. We are going to do that. And believe it or not, I'm going to give priority to people in the Los Angeles area. We're going to actually fly on October 30th from Orange County to Sacramento and back. And we're putting that class together. I got a timeline in just a minute. I'll give you a few more details. And so the main thing I wanted to remind you of is we're going to have a webinar tomorrow night. And I will put it in the Facebook notes afterwards. I'm not that versatile yet. I can go over and whip that thing in there. But it'll be a Zoom webinar tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Standard Time, 9:30 in the East, and it's just to answer questions. I recommend anybody, if you're interested in doing this, because not only are we going to do an Orange County flight, but we're building up to where, if this works out, we're going to try and replicate this, as I've been promising for a longer time, to do it elsewhere. And some of the other destinations I'm thinking about that might be possible before the end of the year would be Atlanta and Boston, because I have a few people that have been asking me incessantly about whether they're going to do that or not. So we're going to do this on October 30th. You got to know, and let me switch to the next slide here. I'll show you some of the constraints now. I am trying to take myself out of the travel agency business and booking the flights myself, and having you pick the flights and all that. And people, I tell them book early because the fares go up towards the end and people forget. And then when we get close to the flight, now that they kept the run, oh my God, the fare, they want $6,000 now to go from Phoenix to Las Vegas. And they say, yes, they do, because you waited. And when you get to the latter days, or a few days before your flight, their algorithm says, if they'd have booked it 6 weeks ago, maybe they weren't so interested. But when they booked the day before, now we know that they really want to make this trip. And so the fare keeps going up. So this is what I'm doing. I'm using Southwest Group Desk for the, I've used them before and gave up on them a while back. So anyway, so on September 8th, that is tomorrow, we're going to launch the 301. And we're going to do it with the webinar. Didn't mention the webinar but I'm going to put a link in here to the webinar, and you should get an email if my team is able to pull this all off. And then September 14th, Southwest requires that I put a deposit down first. So I've got some money invested in this myself. And the next thing is they require full payment for the tickets 45 days prior to travel. Now, what we give up in that area, we gain in terms of locking in at low rates for the entire group of people there. And I have to declare a number. So I'm shooting low. I'm advertising this for 10 fearful flyers. Now, you will have the option of registering a coach, a partner, or a spouse to go with you if you choose to. But it's going to be limited to 10 fearful flyers, because I didn't want to get stuck out giving Southwest a couple $1,000 because you don't get the money back if you don't go. They said they might be a little bit more flexible under the circumstances if somebody decided that they didn't get it off, they wanted to get off and did not want to get on the airplane there. So, but anyways, September 14th. So that's just a week away, where everybody's got to commit. So I'll put that down. And again, I'm going to go over in great detail tomorrow. Now, on October 1st, I'm going to open up my new Clifford Takeoff 201 online course online. So the way we're going to do this is you're going to be able to go at your own pace by going online and doing some of the things with a combination of lectures and quizzes and things and information that you can read. So it has all the learning cells blended in with that. So you can do that to prepare yourself much in the same way that Kim did, only she did it with a coaching session with me. And then on October 16th, we're going to have an online webinar to kind of pull it all together to make sure everybody's moving along and where you're at, and a Q&A. And then I'm probably going to throw in one more webinar in the week before the flight to do a little bit of a briefing there. I haven't nailed that down yet. But then on October 30th, it's all going to come together. And for those of you who will be in the Orange County area or in the Los Angeles basin there, you'll meet me at the airport and we'll do a little pre-brief there. We'll get on the airplane and we'll have the same kind of successful experience that Kim talked about tonight. And the most amazing thing is to watch people come to the airport for that flight and how nervous many of them are, get through the boarding, get on the airplane, and then within a couple of minutes, just completely relax. I know it's hard to believe right now that it's possible, but it is. Eric was amazed the first time he went with me on one of those flights, and convinced like I was that some of you people out there just doing it for the attention there. And by the time we get to in this case Sacramento, and we land, by the time we get ready to turn around and come home, everybody is antsy about getting on and getting underway and getting home, rather than being anxious like they were before. So that's a quick and dirty about what this is going to look like. And like I said, tomorrow night we'll have a webinar. And this is the notice on the webinar. Just another reminder, tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific and 9:30 in the East. So you'll be able to get a link and with all the login information for that. Okay. We do have, for any of you who are in Phoenix, are going to be in Phoenix this Saturday night. We're going to have our monthly Clifford Takeoff 101 class at the airport. It's a 2-hour class from 7 to 9 o'clock. Southwest is gracious enough to get us an airplane, a live airplane where we can join that. We do the entire class on the airplane now. It's a great experience if you're here, whether you're flying in the near future or not. And it come to get a little bit of exposure to the airplane. For a lot of people, that helps if they have issues with claustrophobia. You can see the link across the bottom there. And again, I'll put that in the notes afterwards as well. And then for those of you who do not live in the Phoenix area, the following day, this coming Sunday on September 12th, we'll have our monthly Cleared for Takeoff 101 class online. Same course that we teach basically at the airport. The only difference is you got to pretend you got an airplane, because we don't have an airplane for you to get in unless you could talk people in at the airport into doing that. So let me undo the screen here so we can see everybody's smiling faces. Remove pin, and oh, if I knew what I was doing, I'd be dangerous. I don't know how to do that. Sorry, Kim, I'm trying to get you off the screen there. Let me see if I can find you more.
The chief technical officer has no internet.
Yeah, well, we're gonna let you say goodbye to everybody with your smiling face, Kim. And again, want to thank you, Captain Ron, on behalf of Diane and Eric and our special guest, Kim Thirsk, for joining us tonight. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.